Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of PTN Extra. Evan Kamiko, as always, alongside Mike Irwin. Mikey, it's been a little bit. We've missed you on Wednesdays. We've been taking a little PTN Extra break, but we are back. We are excited to be back. We're going to be back for the foreseeable future. Week 1, about 10 days away. Arkansas taking on Alabama A&M. The last couple of days, Mike, we haven't got to see practice. We haven't heard from any players. It's been the coordinators. Travis Williams went on Monday. Yesterday was Bobby Petrino. I want to focus on Bobby Petrino. We were talking about this before we went on air, and it's just really interesting to see the differences between what Bobby's saying versus a guy like T. Will says versus what Pittman said over the weekend. What really stood out to you about Bobby Petrino's press conference yesterday?
First of all, let me just say that I was always impressed with Petrino in press conferences. He probably is more detailed in what he tells us. He doesn't talk in generalities. He talks in specifics. So right off the bat, to me, I like the specifics. So what did he say that was a little bit different? If you go back to Sam Pittman's assessment of that second scrimmage, he basically said the blocking of the offensive line was much more impressive to him than the pass blocking. And he said he gave a lot of credit for the good job that they did, and they had their 91-yard touchdown run, another one 35 or whatever, and some other runs with some of the other backs. And he was basically giving the offensive line credit for that. Petrino was the opposite of that. He said the run blocking still has a ways to go, and he gave credit more to the offense, to the running backs for those runs than he did the blocking on the part of the offensive line. Now, where he got specific, one of the questions you get over and over, everybody, and fans do this, they are fascinated with Shaq McCroy, just because of how big he is, the fact that he went to Oregon and he was one of the top-rated high school linemen in the country. We get him here. Oh, wow, he's going to play. He looked pretty good last spring. And Petrino said, he looked better in the spring than he does right now. And so why? And he said, because you have all this heat that you didn't have in the spring, and the practices are a lot more intense. And he said, right now, he's got to learn to fight through the fatigue, and he's not doing it right now. So that ought to answer the question of whether or not he's going to take that job away, from Marion. And I don't think he will. I didn't believe that before I heard this, because they just like what he's doing. But whether he's going to come in – now, the difference is he's so flexible. What Petrino said, it may end up in a situation where if somebody gets hurt, he can play any of those positions. So he might get plugged in somewhere else, and then that's when Shaq might come into play as a starter, but not beating him out.
It seems like as we've kind of moved through fall camp that there's a lot of questions on the right side, right? And it seems like Kobe Branham's really established himself. I feel like that. I think it's safe to say that. And then you ask, is it Harris or is it Shaq McCroy? Obviously, the Kobe-Shaq connection is a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, it makes more sense, again, to go with the experience, get Shaq a little bit more condition, because he's a big dude. Like, that is hard to be able to balance playing in the SEC. Again, he's coming from the Big Ten, and he didn't play much at Oregon last year, but now you come to the SEC, it's a different game. These are different guys that are lined up on the other side of you. You're not seeing some scrubs from a Purdue or Washington. Now you're here, and every week there's going to be a great edge rusher on the right side.
Also, college football changes dramatically from maybe the first 2 or 3 games of the year to when you get into cooler weather. So some of these guys that are struggling in the heat won't be struggling later on. And there's always this belief, and I've read some of this. I've read some of this from our local media where they insinuated that they were going to get pushed hard this week. That's not what coaches do. The last week that they have to work before you start game prep, they're winding down a little bit. They don't want their players worn out and exhausted and tired physically before they play the first game of the year. You want them rested, so you actually dial back a little bit. You're still going to have heat problems, but as you get into the 3rd or 4th game of the year, then it becomes a totally different game. The heat is not nearly the factor that it was earlier.
No, and that's the fun thing. We're no meteorologists, but we're going to be up here talking a little bit about weather now. Did not have that in my checkbook on this week's PTN Extra, but right when we get into those October games and the leaves start to change colors and you really have fall settle in, it's almost a different feel, especially being up in the Ozarks here at Arkansas versus you're going to go down to Austin in November and you're going to go, to Knoxville all the way in the Rockies, the Appalachians, wherever Knoxville is, the Smoky Smoky Mountains? Again, I didn't do too well on geography back in high school.
Davy Crockett Mountains.
It might be. It might be. We're not sure. But I think that's a really intriguing point that weather does change things because it has been so dry here in Northwest Arkansas. It finally rained last night. And now cooler weather. It was 70 degrees when I woke up this morning, which is good. So that's always something interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, well, again, I think that helps that it's cooled off this last week before you play this game because I promise you, you're not trying to get your guys in shape right now. You worked on that the first 2 weeks of camp. That's what camp is about. Now you want to dial back. You want these guys, you're working on more on mental reps, eliminating mistakes, and then, of course, game week, you're specifically dealing with what your opponent does on either side of the ball. It's more mental than anything else. So, again, I think it's good that it's cooled off a little bit. I hope it stays that way because the game itself could end up being pretty hot.
And quite frankly, week 2 might be even hotter down at War Memorial in Little Rock. That'll be really interesting to see the conditioning for this team. And then you're still in Memphis, so you're kind of still in that Memphis area, then Oxford, then Memphis. So it's crazy what the weather will do. I do want to, as we move forward and still talk about Petrino, he brought up something interesting about the tight ends, where you might see a couple of them out on the same time. Maybe Rohan Jones as well as Jaden Platt might be out there. Poshka is going to be out there a good amount. Where are you right now with the tight ends? Because I think that's a group, again, you only returned 3 catches from last year. A lot of these guys are new. What's your confidence level right now after hearing Coach Petrino talk?
You know, it's difficult because they did have that one practice where they got chewed out because they were dropping everything.
Yeah.
And so then whoever's watching that, people in the media, they're kind of going, whoa, okay, maybe what we really have with these tight ends is you're going to use them to block more, but can they really catch the ball? But I haven't heard anything about that since. There's been no mention of not catching the ball.
Yeah.
Petrino sort of indicated there's a different way you approach that. He said we might line up and run 3 straight plays, so you're lining up your tight ends, the bigger, more physical guys. Then if you're going to throw 3, we might throw 3 in a row.
Yeah.
But the way he talked, it sounded like they have options, and that's the whole point with your tight ends room. You don't want to be limited. If you want to call a certain play, but gee, we've got this pass catcher in there, but he's not much of a blocker, and you're going to run the ball. Well, doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, and it felt like last year they really were limited again. Ty Washington with all the issues off the field. Luke has on the field issues because he couldn't stay healthy. Now he goes to Ole Miss, so it'll be really interesting to see in the pass catcher room in general, because there's been a lot of talk about that. We've broke that all down on all of our PTN football specials, our CTV special as well. You can check that out. That's also over on 479. That'll be streaming really shortly, which is exciting. But let's talk about the wide receiver. There's one name that I think both of us are really excited about this year. That's CJ Brown. Coach Petrino, nothing but rave reviews of him. Said he took a step forward in that Texas Tech game, in the bowl game, and now here he is. One of the guys who knows the offense the best. How cool is that to see, just with everything that CJ's done and being the local kid, the struggles last year against Texas too?
That is good. But again, the good part overall is the sheer number of guys that they keep mentioning. Petrino mentioned that, and I thought this was significant. He said, I wanted Omega Blake to have more touches because you can tell he still likes him. Maybe he's going to be one of the 3 starters. But why didn't he? Because he said because the progressions didn't go to him. What that tells me is that Taylor Green last year would have looked for Omega Blake. This time he didn't. If there was a specific play and Blake was the second progression or the third, but the first guy was open, then you just go to him. And so that's why he didn't have a bigger scrimmage, was because Taylor Green's doing his job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fun to kind of watch. And you had Monte Harrison, a guy step up who's 30 years old, came from pro baseball. Everyone knows the story by now, hopefully. And now you're seeing this whole point of who are the other guys in the room. Cam Shanks is going to be really interesting. I know Trey is really high on him to see where he kind of lands, whether that's in the receiving game, but also as well in the return game. So they have options, which is interesting. And I'm curious, you bring up Taylor Green and you talk about the progressions, right? Do you think that it's different than last year, where last year he was just going to Armstrong one no matter what, and this year it's more of a full progression kind of offense where he's reading the one. If that's not there, the safety breaks down, then you go to your second progression and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think he went into a lot of plays with a preconceived notion of who he wanted to throw the ball to. We hear all this stuff about Isaac Tesla, and all these fans who are mad at Pittman anyway are now suddenly blaming Pittman and Petrino, saying they were stupid, they didn't know that they should throw to him.
Yeah.
These people either have no memory of what really happened or they're just making stuff up. because the reason they didn't throw to him was Taylon Green didn't target him. He was throwing to other people, and I have no idea why. But when they got to the Missouri game, and suddenly he's your option in the slot, and that's it. He starts throwing to him, and then that's when you see how good the guy really is.
Yeah.
So, again, I think the difference this year, based on what we've seen so far, is this is what they wanted. You've got a quarterback that's not going to look out there and go, oh, this guy's open, but I don't want to throw to him. I'm throwing over here. Mm-hmm. And it ends up being a mistake.
Yeah, and hopefully they limit those mistakes. We've talked about it ad nauseum, the turnovers last year, the mistakes. Cost Arkansas essentially an 8-9 win season, so it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. Well, we're going to talk about that and so much more in the upcoming weeks, but stick around. PTN Extra are going to come back on the other side of the break. We're talking a little bit of claimed national champions. We have some fun. It's a Wednesday. We always do. Stick around. We'll be right back on PTN Extra. Welcome back into PTN Extra. Evan Kamiko and Mike Irwin hanging out with you on this Wednesday afternoon. Mike, we've talked about Arkansas. We didn't really talk about the running backs, which we'll do at a later date. We can have a whole discussion, the defense as well. There's so much to talk about, but one of the big things circling around today on social media has got to be the claimed national titles that Auburn is coming out with. So far, they've claimed 4 today. Let's pop up the graphic. We'll show you what we're talking about. So Auburn, everybody knows national championships. They've got a handful of them. They recently claimed 4. It's kind of a wishy-washy thing, if you want to say. I don't think you should be entitled to claim national champions. Mike and I will get into that in a second. But here are the years that they're claiming. First one is 19-10. Auburn that year went 6-1. The title went to a 9-0 Pitt team. All the titles from here on out were teams that were undefeated. 1914 is the second title Auburn's going to claim. They were 8-0-1. The title that year went to Army. In 1958, another claimed national title for Auburn that they've just recently announced. They went 9-0-1 as well. The title went to an undefeated LSU. And finally, 2004, the Tigers 13-0. The title that year went to USC. Mike, what do you make of this claimed national title thing? Do you agree that national titles should be claimed? Do you think they should be earned on the field? Again, we're in a different time now with the college football playoff, so who knows what would have happened if there was a college football playoff back then, but certainly that wasn't the case, and now Auburn's just saying, hey, we'll just pick a couple national titles from all these years and take them.
My question is, why now? Why are they doing this now?
Yeah.
Couldn't have anything to do with the fact that they stunk last year, and they may not be very good this year. So what you do is you're trying to get your reputation back. You're trying to recruit. So what do? Hey, here's a giant PR move, we think. We're just going to say, hey, we got screwed in the past, and we really won all these national championships. There's only one of those that you could probably argue. The year that there were 3 undefeated teams, and you have the BCS, so a committee picks the 2, so we didn't get picked. But that was the method of determining a national champion, and they weren't it. If you're a fan of a school and that school says, well, we really won this national championship, okay, if you want to believe that, but if you're not one of those, who cares? Do you really sit around and argue about that? You're just laughing about it. You're going, okay, whatever. What I say is, well, you know what matters right now? This season. What's going on with this Auburn team? What are they going to be? That's all that matters. Or whoever you pull for in the SEC. Who cares what happened in the past?
Yeah.
You can claim any national championship, this, that, anything you want, but that's over. It's over. You want to talk about stuff that happened 50 years ago? Seriously? You've got to talk about now. That's what's happening.
I think it also shows what it says about the state of Auburn football. First of all, if we're going to talk about the Tigers, I can't wait to break them down. They'll be in Fayetteville on October 25th for a game against the Razorbacks. It's a program right now. Hugh Freeze is, you can say he's on the hot seat. It hasn't been the start he's wanted going from Liberty to Auburn. And quite frankly, they're a program right now with questions at quarterback. Jackson Arnold comes over from Oklahoma, and he has not looked any good. They're very nervous about him right now over by Toomer's Corner and in that area in Auburn, Alabama. So to your point, right, if you were sitting here right now, we are 10 days from the season starting, and you are claiming national titles. 2 of them, Mike, were from over 100 years ago. I mean, like, that's crazy. Who cares about them, right? Like, it's no different than, like, anyone can claim national titles. Anybody can claim, oh, we were the best team this year. If Dave Van Horn and Arkansas baseball want to walk around, they could say we were the best team in college baseball for most of this year. They could claim the national title. I don't think anyone would really care. Now, did they win it on the field? No. But again, baseball is much different than football. But it's just funny to hear that you need to give your fans hope by going back in time.
Yeah, and maybe if you're Ohio State this year, you lean on that last year. But more than 1 or 2 years beyond a national championship, it just has no impact. It's in the past. Who are you now? What is your team right now? And do they really think they're going to fool their fans? Their fans are going to be sitting there going, wait a minute, we won more national championships than we thought. We're probably pretty good. What?
You think they could like throw a parade? Maybe Auburn will have like 4 parades this fall when they're losing in the afternoon in their non-conference game. They're like, you know what? We got a parade tonight to honor the 1910 team because all the 1910 guys are going to be here on the field this year. Who knows? Like, it's crazy. I mean, UCF back in 2017, Scott Frost, they went undefeated. Obviously did not make the college football playoff, and probably rightfully so, because you could argue maybe because then Cincinnati made it a couple years later when they were undefeated and got walloped in the first round of the college football playoff that year. So it's really interesting to see, like, oh, we can claim the national title, but like you to your point, what does it really mean, right? Like, should Arkansas now walk around claiming more national titles? Maybe.
Yeah, they could claim 77. Notre Dame won the national championship, but Notre Dame lost to Ole Miss that year. Arkansas lost to Texas. That was the only game they lost. So you could sit here, but the point is they didn't get picked.
Yeah.
So they didn't. To me, they didn't win it.
What good does this, like, what kind of precedent, I'm curious, do you think that this kind of sets moving forward for other schools that are struggling and are struggling programs? And let's say Arkansas struggling in a couple years, right? Like, we're just throwing out hypotheticals. We're having some fun here. Arkansas struggling. Do they need to make a move like this? Is this how you energize a fan base, or is this just desperation?
No, a phony PR does not make you better. You can dream up stuff. You can have PR guys come in and give you all kinds of advice on how to make your program look better. The PR stuff maybe works some in the off season, especially through the summer. But this is over now. We got a few more days, and then you're going to start seeing games. And the games are what matter, not what some PR guy comes in and says, hey, this could make you look better if you do this.
Yeah, it'll be really fun to see, and always a fun time talking with you, Mike. Let's talk about Week 0, because Week 0 is coming up. There's a couple games on the docket this weekend. Will you be watching some of the games? What should fans at home here in Arkansas kind of be ready for and looking for in Week 0?
I think you look at any time you have a big matchup, Texas, Ohio State, that's huge. Texas has more at stake, I promise you, because they're number one. They're being pushed as we're this. We've got this name quarterback. He's getting all kinds of NIL money, and he's sitting around going, no, I'm humble.
He's not going to go to the NFL draft.
Yeah. So that is a huge game, and if Texas loses that game, And that's the point. When you're picked that high in the preseason and you have a game that big early on, there's a danger that you don't recover from that if you lose it, because there's so much that goes into that, and that's not even a conference game. You got to try to win that, and then you get hit week after week once conference play starts. SEC just mows you down, and a lot of people feel like the SEC champion this year might have 3 losses, and that's not unreasonable. It's just that's how tough the league is.
And it goes into a bigger scheduling debate, right? We've had this argument. I know you and I have been up here talking before, whether it's talking about Indiana in the office or talking about some of these SEC schools, of do you schedule these marquee games like seeing Texas? I think Alabama has to play Wisconsin at one point, who they haven't been good, but name recognition when it comes to Wisconsin football is there in the Big Ten. Do you think that, again, is it a benefit doing that? Like, or would you rather be in Indiana and playing Kennesaw State in Week 1 and just getting those warm-up games until the show really starts with conference play?
Honestly, in the old days, before you had a real playoff system, you almost had to go undefeated, 1 loss maybe, and then you're out of contention. So the margin for error, getting upset in a certain game, was like not there almost. It was like you can't afford to screw up. You can have losses now, I'm telling you, because as long as you're good enough to get into the playoffs, you may have had some ups and downs, some injuries or whatever, your quarterback didn't deliver him, but he comes back and he's playing pretty well. Once you get into the playoffs, that's what it's all about. How well do you play now? And so what happens this time of the year may not turn out not to matter.
Absolutely. Last thing before we go, Mike, let's have some fun. One bold take for this 2025 Arkansas football team. What is your bold take?
I think they're going to be better as long as certain people don't get injured, like Taylor Green. I think they're going to be much better offensively. I don't know about the defense. The schedule is tougher. But the bold take that I'm going to go is I'm going to say they're going to beat Notre Dame here. I think Notre Dame doesn't know what they're walking into, and the people are going to be going bananas there. Razorback fans, if Arkansas starts off strong, if they go to Memphis and win, especially if they beat Ole Miss on the road, that would be huge. But the point is that game becomes big because of who Notre Dame is. You finally have to come to our place. And actually, Arkansas never played there. I don't think that ever worked out, did it? So,
yeah, they'll play there next year.
Yeah, so you better get them now.
That is scorching, Mike Irwin. Are we sure we want to stick with that? Yeah, that is scorching.
You don't want to go there next year. You lost Taylon Green. You know you're transitioning a new quarterback, but that's the way the schedule works.
I love that. My bold take was going to be Arkansas is going to go into Ole Miss 2 weeks or a week before that and go 1-0 in conference play and win down in Oxford. That's my bold take early on in the season. We'll see which one comes true. Okay. Probably neither. Don't get your hopes up, Arkansas fans. You never know what happens till they hit the gridiron. But that's going to do it for PTN Extra this week. For Mike Irwin, I'm Evan Kamiko. Thanks as always for tuning in. We'll be right back here next week. Week 1 preview, Arkansas, Alabama, A&M. It's getting close. We'll see you next week on PTN Extra.